Good afternoon and welcome. This is the last Wednesday in March. A quarter of the year 2022 is all but history. This past Sunday, we entered into the final phase of the lifting of provincial restrictions. For Sunday service, it is no longer necessary to pre-register, and this coming Sunday, we will return to using the front doors as our primary entry and exit point. While rows of chairs remain 6 feet apart, you're welcome to sit where and with whom you're comfortable. The diocese and we at the Cathedral continue to promote the use of masks as a simple and effective way of controlling the spread of COVID, which, despite the lifting of restrictions, continues to be a present reality. Again, this may seem an overly cautious approach to some, but it is the care and caution that has served us well for these past 2 years. We hope to reintroduce coffee hour and gatherings of other kinds as we move forward, and the return of Eucharist in both bread and wine in the weeks ahead. We continue with a 10 a.m. Sunday morning service. Sunday school and nursery are once again offered, and a 4 p.m. service of choral evensong. You may join us as well on Wednesday mornings in person at 7:30 a.m. for Eucharist. A meditation group meets in the Great Hall Wednesdays at noon, and a Friday noon-hour Book of Common Prayer communion service, and a Thursday evening meditation group via Zoom at 6:30. To connect with that Zoom group, please send an email to prayasucan3@gmail.com. Online, we will continue to offer services on the Cathedral's Facebook and YouTube links. Sunday mornings, 10 a.m. service is posted, along with morning prayer, Monday through Saturday at 6:30 a.m., and available anytime during the day. This coming Friday and Saturday, there will be an online retreat for laypersons titled Come to the Living Water. It runs Friday evening, April 1st from 7 p.m. to 9 p.m., and again on Saturday from 9 a.m. to noon. It will be held via Zoom. It is hosted by the Diocese Creating Missional Communities team. Come to the Living Water includes a deep dive into several Bible passages, short talks, quiet reflection time, small group conversations, and inspiring worship. You can register on the diocesan website or reach out to Lisa Vaughn, LVAUGHN @nspeidiocese.ca. Heather Carter from our Cathedral community is also on the planning team. Because of unanticipated challenges, the annual meeting of the Cathedral has been postponed until after Easter. It will now be held on April the 24th. Anyone who has not yet submitted their committee reports are asked to do so as soon as possible. The search continues for an apartment for Milham Al-Assab, whose refugee status has been approved, and he'll be arriving on April 22nd in Canada. He is a 34-year-old doctor, a GP with a particular interest in neurology and neurosurgery. He's a cousin to a family we previously have supported. If you can help out with furnishings or if you have tips on an apartment, please get in touch with us. As you know from ongoing news reports, the crisis in Ukraine grows more desperate by the day, with over 3 million citizens now displaced. Our national church's Primate's World Relief and Development Fund remains one of the most expedient ways for you to contribute. As of last week, over $250,000 in aid had been received, and in partnership with ACT Alliance, those funds are translated directly into food, shelter, and medical aid in regions where it is needed most. You can make your contribution by visiting pwrdf.org online. For those visiting the Cathedral, St. Stephen's Chapel has been set up as a special place of prayer for Ukraine. This weekend, the Outreach Committee of the Cathedral will be preparing a meal for Turning Point as part of the Adopt a Meal initiative. And finally, the Atlantic School of Theology has announced the date of this year's convocation. It will be held on May the 14th at St. Andrew's Church at the corner of Roby and Coburg. Graduates will include our own student, Debbie Feiss, and Mr. Bill Black will be receiving an honorary Doctor of Divinity degree as part of the ceremonies, as well as delivering the convocation address. A recognized leader in the business community locally, but also serving as lead director of the Bank of Canada board for 4 years. He has served numerous nonprofit boards, a member of AST's President's Council, a supporter of refugee families, and in 2015, Mr. Black was a recipient of the Order of Canada. We know him at the Cathedral as Bill, where he serves as a lay reader and has taught Sunday school for some 35 years. Congratulations. Today's song, poem, and prayer comes not from a saint or a church commemoration, but from a country/pop singer of the 1970s to the 1990s, a man by the name of John Denver. On March 30th, 1974, he reached the top of the music charts for the first time with a song titled "Sunshine on My Shoulder." The 1970s were difficult times in many ways. The war in Vietnam was raging, political dissent, the Cold War, and according to History.com, John Denver confessed, quote, "I was so down I wanted to write a feeling blues song, but this is what came out." Originally released on his 1971 album Poems, Prayers, and Promises, Denver's lovely ode to the restorative powers of sunlight became a smash hit when it was released on his greatest hits album in 1973, an album that would go on to sell more than 10 million copies. According to Wikipedia, John Denver was actually born Henry John Duschendorf Jr., born on December 31st, 1943 in Roswell, New Mexico. His parents were Captain Henry John Dutch Duschendorf Sr., a U.S. Army Air Force pilot stationed at Roswell, and Emma Louise Swope. At age 11, Denver received an acoustic guitar from his grandmother. He learned to play well enough to perform at local clubs by the time he was in college. He decided to change his name to John Denver when Randy Sparks, founder of the new Christie Minstrels, suggested that Duschendorf Jr. would not fit comfortably on a marquee sign. In 1969, Denver released his first album for RCA Records titled Rhymes and Reasons, which included a song he had written called "Babe, I Hate to Go." He later renamed it Leaving on a Jet Plane. The trio Peter, Paul, and Mary covered that song, and it reached #1 on the Billboard charts. Denver's next album, Poems, Prayers, and Promises, was a breakthrough for him in the U.S., thanks in part to the single Take Me Home Country Roads, which reached #2 on the Billboard charts. By the 1970s, Denver was a recognized, outspoken critic of contemporary politics. He expressed his ecologic interests in an epic song called Calypso, an ode to the scientific exploration ship of Jacques Cousteau called the Calypso. Denver founded the charitable WindStar Foundation and was a supporter of a number of causes: the environmental movement, homelessness, world hunger, and the AIDS crisis. Denver, along with being an avid skier and golfer, was a passionate flyer. His love of flying was second only to his love of music. Denver died, sadly, on the afternoon of October 12, 1997, when his light aircraft that he had built himself crashed into Monterey Bay near Pacific Grove, California. So from this singer, songwriter, political activist, and environmentalist, look up John Denver's "Sunshine on My Shoulder." In the Wikipedia article about this song, you may be able to relate to this quote. For Denver says, "I wrote the song in Minnesota at the time I call late winter, early spring. It was a dreary, gray, slushy day. The snow was melting and it was too cold to go outside and have fun. But oh, I was ready for spring. You want to get outdoors again, and you're waiting for that sun to shine, and you remember how sometimes just the sun itself can make you feel so good. And in that very melancholy frame of mind, I wrote, 'Sunshine on My Shoulder.'" So check that one out, John Denver's "Sunshine on My Shoulder." As a poem today, here's one that's a bit lengthy, but it fits with John Denver's inspiration, and it comes from a poet, philosopher, university professor who makes Wisconsin his home. John Cady is author of several volumes of poetry and claims he is influenced by the likes of Elizabeth Bishop, William Wordsworth, Marcel Proust. He's considered one of the foremost romantic poets in the U.S. The poem is titled Late Wisconsin Spring. John Cady. Snow melts into the earth, and a gentle breeze loosens the damp gum wrappers, the stale leaves left over from autumn, and the dead brown grass. The sky shakes itself out, and the invisible birds, winter put away somewhere, return. The air relaxes. People start to circulate again in twos and threes. The dominant feelings are the blue sky and the year. Memories of other seasons and the billowing wind, the light gradually altering from difficult to clear as a page melts and a photograph develops in the backyard. When some men came to tear down the garage across the way, the light was still clear, but the salt intoxication was already dissipating into the atmosphere of constant day April brings between the isolation and the flowers. Now the clouds are lighter, the branches are frosted green, and suddenly the season that had seemed so tentative before becomes immediate. So clear the heart breaks, and the vibrant air is laced with crystal wires leading back from hell. Only the distraction and the exaggerated sense of care, here at the heart of spring, all year long, these feelings alternately wither and bloom, while a dense abstraction hides them. But now the mental dance of solitude resumes, and life seems smaller, placed against the background of this story, with the empty moral quality of an expansive gesture made up of trees and clouds and air. The loneliness comes and goes, but the blue holds, permeating the early leaves that flutter in the sunlight as the air dances up and down the street. Some kids yell. A white dog rolls over on the grass and barks once. And although the incidents vary and the principal figures change, once established, the essential tone and character of a season stays inwardly the same day after day, like a person's. The clouds are frantic. Shadows sweep across the lawn and up the side of the house. A dappled sky, a mild blue watercolor light that floats the tense particles away as the distraction starts. Spring here, as at first so weary, and then so spare that even the birds act like strangers, trying out the strange air with a hesitant chirp or two, and then subsiding. But the season intensifies by degrees, imperceptibly, while the colors deepen out of memory, the flowers bloom, and the thick leaves gleam in the sunlight of another city in a past which has almost faded into heaven. And even though memory always gives back so much more of what was there than the mind initially thought it could hold, where will the separation and the ache between the isolated moments go when summer comes and turns all this into a garden? Spring here is too subdued. The air is clear with anticipation, but its real strength lies in the quiet tension of isolation and living patiently, without atonement or regret, in the eternity of the plain moments, the nest of care, until suddenly all alone the mind is lifted upward into light and air and nothingness of the sky, held there in that vacant circumstantial blue, until in the vehemence of a landscape where the colors disappear, the quiet absolution of the spirit quickens into fact, and then into death. But the wind is cool. The buds are starting to open on the trees. Somewhere up in the sky, an airplane drones. And a closing prayer. Let us pray. God, thank you for spring and the hope of warmer, longer, brighter days. Thank you for the coming of growth and life and birth. Thank you that things are coming awake in the world. This is what our calendar says, and we do see some signs that it is real. But we also still struggle with the residual layover of winter. Now we ask that you bring into reality all that belongs in this season. Your word says that we will have provision and hope and joy and health and loving relationships here and now in this life. We ask that what belongs in this season would become actual in our practical lives. We hope in you and in your promises. We hope and give thanks for your gift of spring. Amen. Thank you for tuning in. Stay safe, keep in touch, and keep the faith until we meet again.